Hello, welcome back, PlayBASIC coders. We're doing a bit of a catch-up, a bit of a blog this afternoon about what's going on, where we do, what do we do, what's happening, whatever. Like normal, life stepped in the road and has delayed website development a bit. We're probably a good month behind schedule with that, which is not great. It sucks actually. Here's the old site anyway. There's the parts that are taking, well, where we were up to last time, I pretty much recreated everything we have in the old site, except for, I think the FAQs section was not done, but that was a smaller part. We probably could have got away with just not doing that in this phase. We might do that anyway. Might just skip past it and go, well, okay, we'll tackle that, in the next round of updates, because there will be more updates. But like moving house, all this kind of stuff, that's the umbrella we're talking about. Moving is just such a, you think it's not going to be a massive time drain, and it is, and then you get behind in everything, and then trying to catch up, and these kind of things don't take precedence really. Even though I'm trying to do this full time, there's other things that need to get done in order to stay afloat, pretty much. Given that these things don't make anything. I know it sounds crazy to people, but to give away free stuff to people cost me a fortune. Just remember that. So anyway, in recent times, I made a few projects actually. One was the function finder. Pretty happy with this. I ran into a problem where I think we've all had the same problem. Code bases get bigger, and it's like, where is this thing, or where's that function? I talked about this years ago with Amos source codes, and was forever saying to myself, well, I've already done that thing way back in the day in Amos or these older languages, but they weren't text, they weren't easily searchable. You had to load up the emulator and find them and stuff. And so that's why I wrote the Amos to PlayBASIC translator. Translating it to PlayBASIC, well, an offshoot of doing the translation to text, really. It's like, well, we're scanning through the document, we might as well just convert it anyway. But still, we all end up with lots of source files, etc. everywhere. So I've added a bit of extra support to this now. It's got PlayBASIC files, DBA, BlitzBASIC, App Game Kit, and PHP. There's probably other ones that and if they're like these ones here, they would be easy to add. It wouldn't be any big drama. But using it, you just pick the files you're interested in or whatever. Go to a folder, and it'll do a scan. You can view them. This is a bit different than other ones. This one actually there's our function there highlighted. I'm just testing this other thing at the end. So I can view the function out of the file. So it loads the file, locates that chunk, and shows you that section. So it's a larger one there. And I can add that to a clip, of course. So I'm stockpiling the code, and then I could dump it out to a file at the end. So I could do a mass search and find these things. This thing at the end here, if I click this, it'll open up the file in Notepad. But it'll only work if your file associations have Notepad as being the default one. I think it might work if other tools are associated with the file extension. I'm not sure about that. It's just a Windows thing. If I pick a file up here that I haven't got associated, there's a DarkBASIC file, it won't open up the editor because that's not associated with edit. That's okay. What I probably should do is just load the whole document into this same screen here, and just let you scroll through the whole thing and do a cut and paste or whatever, or just open that folder. Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. Just open the folder that's in. That might be fine. Because the problem I have is you write so many things for across the time. And these folders end up with huge amounts of trinket bits of code in them, generally small examples and big examples, and you've done the same stuff over and over and over again. So finding those things can be tedious. So that's what this tool's all about. It does do an export to HTML, so you can have what functions are within the files, what parameters they have, are there any conflicting functions. There aren't in this case. Pretty cool. So this has been a side project, of course. It came about through necessity. Was doing the website stuff, was having these collisions, because that's written in PHP, of course. That's why this thing supports PHP at all. The program's quite straightforward. It's always clumsy doing your own custom GUI stuff, but I just use the menu things, whatever I've got laying around. Try and just copy and paste the same structure across, blob it in, just try and make it work within that framework, and then don't worry about it. Other things I've written recently so this is another thing I wrote recently. Let's have a look at it. Yeah. Alright, just find something to load. I don't know what we have here. See if this thing even works. Yeah, that's cool. So our application loaded this project, set it up, and dragged it into memory, and is running it now as a separate process. That's our response from the application. So I could load another one. Because PHP projects are kind of weird. They're the IDE file is an XML file with all of the source codes in it. So there's like a file section that has these files listed in it, and within that, each file can have include files within it. So you need to phrase through and find them out. That stuff's in here somewhere. Yeah, there it is there. It's a pretty trivial approach to doing this, but it works well enough, and I think is pretty fault tolerant. Couldn't guarantee that, but what I mean is there might be a situation where this code behaves different than PlayBASIC, so it won't find something even though it's in where the normal PlayBASIC compiler would find it. That's all I mean. So that was kind of fun to do. I don't think there's much else really. There's a bunch of older stuff, of course. Always working on things. Right, head across the boards. There's a bunch of new source codes, etc. across here. Under resources in source code section, some stuff about returning multiple parameters from a function that's called call DLL, call function actually. Load and run project example, function mapper, that's the source code you were just looking at, defined functions across things, some other things in here, pretty sort of straightforward kind of things that you probably would have seen before. The main drama at the moment is getting the forum getting the website over the line. You're looking at the old version for the time being, and those people who've followed through the development diary of that, I knew going in last year, I thought, well, if I open up this can of worms, it's going to be a much bigger project than what I was banking on. And you might be surprised how big some of this stuff has got, even though it's kind of simple and quaint. It's easy to forget that there's a lot under the hood. At the moment, everything this does is replicated. And new sections done, features, galleries, tutorial, source code, tools, they're all done. I think except the FAQs. In the new site, that's no longer a thing. And the front page is different as well. That's not finalised at the moment. They're still just a piece together, just trialling some ideas. Internally, a lot of changes have been made to the user account stuff. A lot of the code that was kind of unique has been removed. All of that's kind of been more streamlined, put together, I guess. So there's kind of better systems for building up the pages. It's more fault tolerant as well. So when things are posted incorrectly, it won't break as much, which is a problem before. You know, I mean, users wouldn't be aware of that, but you know, if I added a news item that had the wrong things in it, it could break the whole thing. It's probably still possible in certain places, you know, but for the time being, that's okay. The things that are left to do is really just do the cleanup and do the final testing of where it is at the moment to make sure the user can sign up for an account, get onto their account, collect their license or download their products, search through all the old products. That's one of the main things that's changed. You've got local searching of all of the gallery sections, so you can just go and do a search of whatever term you want. And it does a lossy search as well, so it's not looking for the exact thing you type. It looks for words that are very similar to that, which is much easier to find stuff. It might be the first result, might be the first handful of results, but it works much better. All the main stuff here is all the same, you know. If you want to look at that stuff, go. There's a whole running dialogue of these transformations that'll be happening for the last year. I knew it would take a long time. I just don't have the free time I used to have. And it's starting to bite. You know, I was hoping to be in compiler land by now. You know, looking at, hey, here's PV2 by the end of the year, but that's unlikely now. We'll be somewhere in there. Depends on how much this website stuff we have to keep doing beyond here. I think we can get away with pushing some things back that I had in mind up front. There's the things I love the idea of that should be a part of the website from just from a user's perspective, let alone an educational perspective. But they just consume a lot of time and effort to make them. And we're not making complicated things. Like I'm by no stretch of the imagination a good web designer. That's far from the truth. This is the old page, remember? It's got a whole bunch of errors all through it. I'm really, really sort of hopeful that we'll get a soft launch of the new website by the end of the month. I've got to do the final testing of where I was, because I decided to release that version and then was interrupted with this other stuff. And I've been trying to get back to it the last week. As you know, things just don't go to plan, particularly when they take a long time to do. It's much easier to do a small project that takes 2 weeks or whatever than to do something that takes 6 months. We've run into a bunch of faults and had to go back, and things I never wanted to change, I've had to rewrite the very core of the website, which has been good in many ways. It's got rid of a lot of legacy code. I'd say the footprint of the code now is about 50% of what it was before. So it does more things, but there's less code to manage. There's more reuse, a lot more reuse actually. We've got this generalized system for doing these different data sections of the site, which is terrific. And the generalized form stuff has helped enormously. Getting like form interactions like this kind of stuff here, just doing a very simple form like this, just having a system where you can just drop the form in, give it a few bits and pieces about the data you're inputting and retrieving, and have it do the validation and all of that stuff before it ever runs your code is brilliant. Makes life so much simpler, because every time you had a new page or you need to have any kind of interaction with the user, that's a bunch more work than what you expect. The more these systems are boiled down, the less code you end up writing. You're reusing elements all the time, but But if those things change at some future point, languages like PHP, for example, aren't compiled. If you make changes to a function's parameters, if that piece of code that calls that function isn't being executed, then that section will run with no errors. It'll run until that call is being requested, and then you get a broken bit of code. When I said testing before, that's what I meant, going through and testing every bit of functionality the site has to make sure that all of those things have been catered for. So writing a function finder tool was about finding these collisions that were occurring inside some of the sections of the site against the new code versus the old code. Do I need the old code anymore? Can I get rid of that stuff? Most times it turns out they're basically the same. Get rid of the old one, just have the new libraries, just simplify and cull down as I go through. Look, the hope is to get this stuff towards the end of this month, and then I'll probably leave it for a while, see how it's going with people, see when I put it up, are people running into errors or mistakes or whatever, and then address those problems, and then get back into the compiler level stuff. Got so many ideas for the compiler, it's not funny. I'll give you an example. These are kind of PHP ideas or seasons, I guess. These days it's kind of commonplace for arrays to use square brackets for our indices. So in other language you might have, like, you don't actually have dim, but let's keep it basic related. We might have a thing called table of 100 slots, but they would use square brackets to denote the indicing, right? There's a reason for it. This is done phrased a particular way. Underneath the guts of this table is really a pointer to this block of code. This is an indice, and in C land. In BASIC, this has become a thing too, or in modern programming, this has become a thing. So what I was thinking about is that I don't see a problem actually of allowing a user to do this. Like if you wanted to use square brackets for your arrays, that would be fine. It would also support the traditional, just normal brackets for your arguments in there. What I was thinking about was that if it sees the dimension, the array name, looks at the bracket you use and goes, okay, you want to use round brackets every time you address table. From then on, it would just expect you to use these brackets. But if you declare it like this, it can do the same thing. It goes, okay, you declared me with square brackets, then from here on in, you refer to me like this. So if we're grabbing, index 10 from here, printing it out, that's how you would do it. If I went then and tried to do this, we could have it, actually bark at you and say, this thing here, is declared as square brackets, for whatever, So those people who are more comfortable with this would assimilate much easier. Another one too is a kind of an old one, is that with strings, it's so common to have the double quotes. If you wanted to have a string with double quotes in it, what do? You have to have, you go, well, I'll have character 34 plus here. Now that's going to make an output of this string, including the quotes. Whereas what you can do in PHP, for example, is that you can actually use a different quote character like this. Now that's a string literal as well as the one above it. We would make no discerning difference as to what the two things are. You can just use the two different approaches however you like. This way here would mean you could use your quotes inside. Now, it doesn't work inside the IDE because the IDE is phrasing that, going, hey, this is a string, that's a text, and that's the general idea. Other things too, you know, classic ones like, because we step through arrays all the time, you know, expanding what for each does, or making variations of for loops, you know, rather than just having, you know, here's my iterator. When I'm starting from here and I'm going to size, we have table, we have a size, maybe a size variable up here or something. Size, yeah. Print table loop. Right, so we've gone through every index in the table and rendered it out. The one I liked quite a while ago was like a shortcut of kind of this, where you could sort of go, I forget now whether I had the each keyword, but it was like this. You'd still need your iterator in this particular case, because we need to know which index of the table we want to grab from. You could kind of do, you could go for table and then as our loop, grab the loop counter. You could maybe also do something like, you know, a loop comma value. Now what that would do, we wouldn't need this, we just have a value there. So this first value here would be the index. So we could do it like a traditional loop of looping across all of the things inside table. And if we had value here, this would, under the hood, it's going, you know, table loop value equals this. Right, so in our old school terms, this is like here to size value table. Good typing today, Kevin. Very, very well done. Yes. In here, we really shouldn't need to know the size. Often we're just going to skim through something, find something, you know, that kind of situation. We don't really need to find something, modify the table and put it back together. In those situations, just having a shortcut that let us go through all the stuff in this thing and get the things out that we want to would just save a bit of extra boilerplate. If this was typed, if table was typed to something, this could do elimination, could skip over cells that are not declared. So if table isn't anything, you effectively have this behavior in here. You know, just another little bit of work taken away from the user. You're still doing the same thing. In the old design document, there's actually a few of these kind of ideas in it. I don't think they're that format, but whatever the format happens to be, whatever the layout of something happens to be, that's the principal idea. The other one is actually having, we rather have an integer index in here, you know, rather than have 100 of these, 1,000 of these things here, we mightn't even bother telling it how many of these things we have. Internally, it just keeps track of how many there are. But the key point would be is rather than have to run through and have like a loop counter or whatever we're doing before, for loop each whatever would happen to be. Well, this is an integer. This index here is an integer. One thing that's very, very useful is actually having a keyed array for doing things like properties and this kind of thing. So you could have table and then have a key in here. say it's status equals true or something. So what happens is that when we write to table, it looks up this key and looks for the key value pair. In this case, we're writing over the existing value with true. I have a score thing there as well. Oh, sorry. I have a score. Jeez, Kevin, what are you doing? I might have a score, 1,000 points or something. And to retrieve them, it's the same thing. You just print them out. Table score, grabs this, whatever type this thing is. So internally, these would be a bit different than normal, the simplistic types. We'd have like a variant thing, so you write integer or float or string data to it, or array handles to it, maybe something else, I don't know off the top of my head, and then retrieve them by just querying that thing and getting it back. So this might be a handle of another structure. It might be another complex structure that's included inside those things. So you make these quite elaborate structures out of these things, and it does away with that need to, it's comfortable to use a name rather than an index. And it kind of makes the code a bit more readable. I mean, you could do this, granted, right? These might be pre-declared up here as constants. In that case, then, if these are separate indexes, we are treating table as if it's an integer array. We want the data to be able to store integer data or floats or an array or a string or something like that, or maybe even something more game related. You never know. Whatever makes sense, really. Just general purpose sort of finding properties and doing that kind of stuff. It's just a much easier way of doing it. It's a much more modern way of doing it too. It's commonplace in other languages, and a bit more contemporary, a bit more modern, and still kind of fits in with the sort of basic sort of philosophy. I mean, all these things are really, there are lots of new ideas that are available in more modern languages. We want to pick and choose what's actually going to make difference for our programs. As long as we do that, we'll make life easier for people. Anyway, running out of steam. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time, and enjoy yourself. Bye.